You wake up, and it's the year 2560 before Christ. No alarm and no phone, just the gray light before sunrise. You're in Egypt, on the west bank of the Nile, where almost everyone you will ever meet already lives. You are not a pharaoh, you are not a priest, and you are not a scribe. You're an ordinary worker, one of thousands, and today that turns out to matter. Today you go to work on a stone building for your king, a man named Khufu. It will take 20 years and more than 2 million blocks, and you will not live to see it finished. You wake before dawn in a house made of mud brick in a room that still smells of last night's fire. Your wife is already awake, grinding grain between two stones to make the day's bread. Breakfast is the same as almost every meal you will ever eat, bread and beer. Everyone drinks the beer, children included, because the river water can quietly make you sick. The bread is a different problem, because grinding grain on stone leaves finds sand baked into every loaf. Over the years that grit files your teeth down flat, almost to the gums, and you feel it already. You step outside, and the whole valley has changed overnight. It's July, and the Nile has flooded far across the fields the way it does every single year. Your farmland sits underwater for about 3 months, so there is simply nothing to farm. And that is exactly the point, because during the flood the king needs your hands on his pyramid instead. Here is the first thing almost everyone gets wrong about this. You are not a slave being whipped up a ramp. That picture comes from old movies, and the evidence disagrees. Archaeologists actually found a town where the builders lived right next to the site. They found the workers themselves buried in tombs beside their king. Slaves do not get honored graves like that. You are paid in bread, in beer, and in rations of grain week after week. Some men here were called up for the flood season, and others are full-time skilled crews who live on site. Thousands of cattle, sheep, and goats were driven in just to keep the workforce fed. You get onions, garlic, fish, and bread most days, more meat than many people expect. Feeding 20,000 workers every day was its own enormous operation behind the scenes. Now you reach the site, and it looks like chaos, but there is order underneath it. You belong to a gang, a named team of workers who scratched their names into the stone. These men are your teammates, your rivals, and your closest friends all at once. Your job today is moving blocks of limestone, and the average one weighs about 2.5 tons. Nobody lifts these. You drag them slowly on wooden sledges, hauling on thick ropes. A man walks ahead pouring water on the sand, and that simple trick cuts the friction almost in half. A later Egyptian painting shows this exact method. Water poured in front of a sled dragging a giant statue. Your tools are copper chisels and heavy stone pounders. There is no iron, no steel, no wheel on this site. Just ramps, ropes, levers, and an amount of patience that is hard to imagine today. Step back for a moment and look at what all of this is building. The pyramid will rise about 146 meters into the sky, holding roughly 2.3 million blocks, and it stays the tallest thing humans build anywhere on Earth for the next 3,800 years. They lined it up almost perfectly with true north with no compass, using only stars, string, and shadows. Work like this is exhausting, and every single day tests your strength. But here's something most people never hear about. When workers were injured, they weren't simply replaced. They were treated, cared for, and given time to recover. The pyramid depended on skilled hands, and keeping those hands healthy was part of the job. Some days are festivals, when nobody hauls stone and the whole town eats extra meat and drinks freely. You honor gods with names like Ra, Hathor, and Osiris, and to you the king is a living link to all of them. Years pass, seasons flood and drain, and the pyramid keeps climbing higher above the desert. Your back aches now, your teeth are nearly gone, and the work is harder than it used to be. By now you have taught your own sons how to haul stone the same way you learned it. Maybe you scratch your gang's name into a hidden block, where an archaeologist will find it thousands of years later. Long after your working days are over, the pyramid is finally completed by the next generation. Now jump forward about 2,000 years, when a Greek traveler named Herodotus visits Egypt. He hears that 100,000 slaves built the pyramid, writes it down, and the world believes the story for centuries. But he arrived 20 centuries after the last block was set. He was actually closer to us than to you. The excavations at Giza tell a completely different story. They reveal a paid, well-fed, and well-cared-for workforce of around 20,000 people. You were never a slave in a movie. You were a skilled worker who moved mountains by hand using rope, copper, and water. Every empire that came after you eventually disappeared, and even Egypt's ancient gods faded into history. But the monument you helped build with your own hands is still standing today. Millions of people travel from every corner of the world just to stand before it. They admire its size, its precision, and its mystery. But they rarely stop to think about the man who dragged the stones. That man was you.